station was.
Tony Clark and other Bournemouth mission officials wrote Richard several letters. Some of them distressed Richard so much he tore them up on the spot. Others warned him of the consequences if he quit Scientology and asked him to come into the mission. Andrea knows the routine. It's called re-ruining.
He might be shown write-ups he'd done of past misdeeds and very strongly reminded that those things still existed within him as emotional difficulties, and he'd be brought to a very low emotional point. All the influence that the church had priorly brought to bear on him would be re-brought to bear, and the indoctrination would be hammered in harder.
Richard's sister was on a visit home in July. She saw him on the morning of his death.
Richard was anxious about the fact that he was wanting to leave Scientology, and he was concerned that they were not letting him leave and that they were threatening to print personal information about him. That was what he voiced to me on that morning.
Later, Richard left home saying he was going to visit a friend. He stopped at a garage nearby for petrol and some cigarettes, but he never arrived at his friend's house. For several hours, his movements are unaccounted for, but much later that night, Richard parked his car by the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. At 10 minutes to midnight, he jumped to his death.
I feel, and my family feel, that Richard would still be alive today if he hadn't become involved with the Church of Scientology. And I feel that they have a responsibility for people that they're recruiting. And if people wish to leave the organisation, then they need to give people that freedom to leave without harassment and without threat.
The fact that he committed suicide is a tragedy. But the fact that people would then make an allegation that because at some point he had an involvement in the Church of Scientology, that therefore the Church of Scientology is responsible for it, is reprehensible. It's disgusting.
Even after Richard had died, the harassment continued. Unaware of the suicide, Tony Clark sent increasingly angry and threatening letters. In one, he wrote, "Be bloody ethical and get yourself sorted." 10 British recruits to Scientology have committed suicide in the past 12 years. But despite disturbing evidence in cases like Richard's, Britain has been tolerant of the cult. In Europe, it's a very different story. There, the authorities have taken strong action against Scientology because of public outrage over the suicide of recruits. The cult's use of manipulative psychological techniques and dubious financial practices have been condemned.
Trust. Trust. Trust.
Lyon in France last Friday, and the climax of a sensational criminal trial. 14 leading Scientologists are convicted of fraud after a recruit was driven to suicide. Nellie Vick, the widow of the man who died, arrives at court with her lawyer. The Scientologist had persuaded her husband to take out a £3,000 loan. He had fallen under the influence of the cult, which provoked family quarrels.
Parce qu'il s'est trouvé dans cette situation de blocage intellectuel.
He couldn't find a way out of his dilemma. He was caught. His wife didn't want him to borrow the money, which meant he was torn between his loyalty to his family and his loyalty to the Scientologists. He couldn't make the choice between them, so finally he committed suicide.
Patrice Vick jumped from the 12th floor of this block of flats. Last Friday, leading French Scientologist Jean-Jacques Mazier was convicted of his manslaughter and of committing fraud. Sentencing Mazier to 3 years in prison, the judge said, amassing money is one of the essential concerns, if not the only concern, of the Church of Scientology. But the Scientologists dismissed the case as religious persecution.
The formation of the Christian religion was fraught with intolerance. I mean, Jesus Christ was tried in a court not unlike the court in France. He was tried in a court and found guilty, and he was put to death. Today, they don't do that anymore. Today, we've got the media to do that to people.
Trust. Trust. Trust.
In Germany, there have been street protests against the Scientologists, and the demonstrators have been backed by tough official action. Both main political parties have banned Scientologists, and in some regions, members of the cult are not permitted to work in the public service.
Die Scientologen erheben einen Machtanspruch über die Gesellschaft und über Menschen.
Scientologists seek control over society and over individual people. You have to act when they're using criminal methods and failing to abide by the law. We also know that they set out to infiltrate their followers into public offices, into the economy, into politics, and into the press. The aim is to form a network of Scientology agents to undermine society.
2 German Scientologists have been jailed for tax evasion, and in some places the cult's members have been banned from owning property because of fears about their growing influence. And all over the country, schools give children lessons warning of the cult's recruitment methods. The cult claims that the anti-Scientology feeling has been whipped up by the Catholic and Lutheran churches and accuses its critics of behaving like Nazis.
There is a simple answer for the people that don't like those comparisons being made, which is stop saying things and stop doing things that are directly parallel to what did happen in the 1930s.
Trust.
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 And the cult is in the dock in Spain too. 21 Scientologists, including the church's international president, Heber Jenscher, have been indicted for crimes including tax evasion and inducement to suicide. Once again, the Scientologists say they're all trumped-up charges. Back in Britain, in 1993, Roger Tuffin joined the Sea Organisation, Scientology's elite corps.
The only way that I could really get out would be to move up into the Sea Organisation, which would be looked at as being a positive thing to do in Scientology, but it would help me escape the finances and the trouble that was there, because I didn't agree with it, but I couldn't win a one-man battle on sorting it out.
Roger was posted to Scientology's ship Free Winds in the Caribbean. There he looked after the cult's war chest, amassed from the huge donations collected worldwide.
It certainly rose into hundreds of millions. They'd make roughly worldwide about $500,000 a week in donations.
Trust.
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 The purpose of this enormous fund of money is to pay for massive propaganda campaigns across the world aimed at presenting Scientology as a proper religion. With such huge sums at its disposal, Scientologists are in a position to influence millions of vulnerable people. But some who've seen the cult from the inside warn against being won over.
When I saw the trust ad, I was horrified. I've not been the most trustworthy person in my life, and having made this programme, I may get into serious trouble for that. But I felt that people needed to know the truth. Scientology is not an organisation that you can trust. Far from it.